Jesus gathered in that city near Jerusalem, that they couldn't just come out in an ordinary clothes. They had to wear raggedy clothes, black clothes, and they had to cover their faces. And this was to identify them as being dead. Because being behind the wall, they were referred to as dead people walking. So they put that name on them as being dead men walking. I think that's how we get to hear of this term, dead men walking. So when they came out, they had to cry out too. They said, I forget the word that they cry out. And when they heard the word, you have to isolate yourself. When I come to it, I remind you all. They shouted when they heard that Jesus, but before they come close, they could not come further than 6 feet. So there was a throng of people, a crowd of people that surround Jesus, and they had to be behind that crowd. Ordinarily, they would push through the crowd, but they had to stay behind at least 6 feet. Oh my God. Oh, they had to, and they cried out, unclean. Unclean, meaning that they were unclean. And everybody would, I can just imagine people running when they hear unclean, unclean. But they shouted with all their might, amen. The lepers expressed certain behaviors when they got close to the crowd. After shouting, they become very desperate because they couldn't get close to Jesus. But they knew that if they could only get close to Jesus, they would be healed. But remember, Jesus is God. And Jesus knows what goes on around us. And he sees from distance, near and far. Amen. They knew they had an incurable disease that only Jesus could have healed them. And Amos, when we read in Amos 5 verse 4, it says, seek me and live. So if we are going through a situation today, let us seek God. And we are seeking God for life. Because when you seek God, you will live. You will live. Amen. They express humility. Now they humble themselves. They stood at a distance and they shouted. The Lord, at that time, the Lord did not permit them to go anywhere near anyone. So they had to stay at least that 6 feet off away from the crowd. Amen. And you know, when we read in James 4:10, it says, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. So they humble themselves